It didn't begin with speeches or with applause. It began with dust on a highway few ever noticed, in a country the world rarely mentions. There was no grand announcement, no international conference, no ribbon cutting in front of foreign dignitaries, just a new sign, a stretch of road, and a toll station no one thought would ever be built. Three modern toll booths rising quietly in the heart of Burkina Faso, Butenga, Tintalu, Kotedougou, and they weren't borrowed. They weren't donated. They weren't tied to any foreign loan. They were built by hands that had been dismissed, built with funds that weren't supposed to be enough, built under pressure, under sanction, under siege, but not under submission. This isn't just a story about roads. It's not even a story about tolls. It's a story about leadership, about the will to act when others are still discussing. While others were drawing up feasibility reports and booking hotel rooms for the next round of donor negotiations, Captain Ibrahim Traoré was simply building. Not loudly, not rhetorically, but decisively. And the world wasn't watching, because the world didn't expect this. Not from Burkina Faso, a nation landlocked and too often overlooked, ranked among the poorest, targeted by terrorism, cut off from the very institutions it once relied on. Burkina Faso was supposed to wait for help, wait for loans, wait for permission. But help never came, and Traoré never waited. He moved, and one morning the people of Butenga woke up, and there it was, a toll station with clean lanes, glass windows, electronic sensors, and signs. Not a proposal, not a rendering, not a simulation, a reality. Before long, another one appeared in Tintalu, then another in Kotedougou. 3 modern toll posts, standing in a country the international press had already written off. There was no breaking news alert on global networks, no special coverage, just drivers passing through, blinking at the unfamiliar, slowing down not just for payment, but out of awe. Some even thought it was a dream. Others thought it was temporary, a photo op, a structure without a system. But then, something different happened. The toll worked, the receipts printed, the traffic flowed, the sensors scanned, the staff showed up every day, and people began to realize this wasn't theater, this was transformation. And all of it without foreign funding. That phrase, without foreign loans, might seem small to some, but on this continent, it means everything. It means no interest rates tied to currency speculation. It means no conditions buried in diplomatic smiles. It means no technocrat flying in to advise on what the country already knows. It means sovereignty in concrete form, because for too long, development in Africa has been dressed in foreign signatures. Announced by ambassadors, funded by institutions with their own priorities, and when the ribbon is cut, the debts begin to grow, and when the potholes return, the donors disappear. But here, in these 3 toll stations, something has shifted. The architecture is modern, yes. The payment systems are digital, yes. But the real innovation is that Burkina Faso did it alone. And the silence from the international community, that's not confusion, that's disbelief. Because it's easier to explain poverty when it fits the old narrative. Corruption, mismanagement, chaos. But what happens when a nation under pressure builds smarter than the ones with peace? What happens when a landlocked country, at war, under sanctions, builds toll stations that put some major African highways to shame? The answer is simple. The world gets uncomfortable, because it means the excuses are over. It means that sovereignty isn't a speech, it's an invoice paid with your own currency. It's a road maintained without calling Paris. It's a booth that collects funds for the people, not for the donors. And it's happening now, not someday. Not after another election cycle. Not after more promises. Now. This is the unexpected revolution. And it didn't start with noise. It started with roads. Before the foundation was poured, before the glass was polished, before the signs were mounted above the lanes of Butenga, a question hung in the air. The same question that stalks every dream in Africa. Who's funding this? Because for too long in too many capitals, development has become another word for debt. In one country, a flyover bridge bears a flag from 6,000 kilometers away. In another, a hospital wing opens with money that will take decades to repay. In city after city, there are plaques that commemorate foreign generosity, but no plans for what happens when the funding dries up. Burkina Faso said no, not with defiance, not with slogans, but with action. Under Captain Ibrahim Traoré, the government made a decision. If you build a nation with borrowed tools, you'll spend generations paying for the handle. So they didn't beg. They budgeted. They didn't draft dependency proposals. They redirected internal revenue. They didn't wait for foreign ministries to give approval. They looked inward, and they got to work. The toll stations that now stand in Ouagadougou, Tintalou, and Butenga are not just booths. They are financial statements. Statements that say this nation will fund its own roads, maintain its own highways, sustain its own systems, and the engine behind this decision? It's called the Fonds Spécial Routier du Burkina Faso, the Road Special Fund, a locally governed institution. No flashy ads, no international billboards, just a simple, stubborn commitment to managing the country's road network, fairly, transparently, and independently. Led by Theodore Ouedraogo, the fund has taken on more than asphalt and toll booths. It has taken on an ideology that self-funding is not only possible, it's more efficient, because when the money stays in the country, so does the responsibility. This model is not built on aid, it's built on accountability. Users pay. Roads stay open. Maintenance is funded directly. No more waiting for budget cycles from Brussels. No more emergency calls to Washington. And for a nation under ECOWAS sanctions, a nation isolated by the very networks it once tried to please, this choice is not just practical, it's revolutionary. Because in most African capitals, tolls are synonymous with corruption. People pay, but roads still crumble. Money is collected, but no one sees where it goes. In contrast, Burkina Faso's model is radical in its simplicity. Pay electronically, track the data, audit the system, fix the roads, repeat. It's boring, it's honest, and that's why it's brilliant. But the real story isn't just about systems, it's about the timing. Why now? Why in the middle of a regional storm with inflation, terrorism, sanctions, and disinformation all pressing in, would a transitional military government choose to pour money into toll gates? Because they understand that dignity cannot be delayed. You can fight for your sovereignty militarily. You can reclaim your gold mines. You can cut off foreign interference. But if your people are still bouncing over potholes, still dying on roads that collapse in the rainy season, still walking 10 kilometers because transport routes are broken, then your sovereignty is incomplete. So Traoré's government made the decision that most leaders fear, to build in the middle of the storm. Not after everything is calm, not once the donors return, not once the image is polished, but now, while the nation is still bleeding. Because true governance doesn't wait for the perfect conditions, it creates them. And so the toll stations rose, not just as infrastructure, but as a line in the sand, a message to the world. Burkina Faso is no longer waiting to be rescued. It is rescuing itself. And in a continent where loans are easy, but freedom is rare, that decision is priceless. They don't look like much at first, a roofed structure, a few booths, some signage and lanes. But look closer. Look with the eyes of a nation that's never had one. Look as a Burkinabè farmer whose goods used to rot before reaching market. Look as a driver who once swerved around cratered roads and bribery checkpoints. Look as a student who walked dusty miles because public transport never came. Then you'll see it, a quiet revolution, made of glass, steel, sensors, and sovereignty. These aren't just toll gates, they are gateways, not just for cars, but for change. The station at Butenga, now fully operational on National Route 4, was the first to draw national attention. It appeared almost overnight, not in whispers, not in promises, but in structure. 6 open lanes, multiple vehicle categories, digital payment systems, and above them all, a single powerful phrase, Poste de péage de Butenga. No donor names, no flags of former powers, no plaques thanking anyone across the sea, just the country, owning what it built. Then came Tintalou, then Ouagadougou, 3 toll stations in motion. And these are not makeshift checkpoints. They are modern, precise, deliberate. Let's talk about the technology. Each station is equipped with smart electronic systems that record traffic in real time, log payments digitally, print receipts instantly, categorize vehicles for accurate tolling, feed all data back into a centralized national database. No more handwritten ledgers, no more cash in pockets, no more loopholes for corruption to slip through. This is automated transparency. For the first time, Burkina Faso has infrastructure that sees, tracks, and responds. If traffic is heavy in one region, systems know it. If repair is overdue on a stretch of highway, the system flags it. If funds are needed for expansion, the revenue isn't a mystery. It's already accounted for. This isn't just innovation, this is accountability, encoded. But the brilliance doesn't end in hardware. What makes this system revolutionary is that it's owned. The Road Special Fund, led by Theodore Ouedraogo, oversees operations. No foreign outsourcing. No mysterious consultants from abroad, just trained Burkinabè staff, engineers and finance experts, running it with precision. For the first time in decades, the toll someone pays to drive isn't vanishing into shadowy ministries or distant bank accounts. It's circulating back into road maintenance, into upgrades, into safety barriers, signage and resurfacing, into a system where those who use the road help fund its survival. This is what makes the model sustainable and repeatable. Every vehicle that passes through these stations contributes not to a debt trap, but to a national promise. If you help carry the load, you deserve a better road, and that promise is already visible. Local communities near the stations report more reliable road conditions, reduced bribery from informal checkpoints, increased commerce as delivery routes stabilize, and, for the first time, a sense of ownership. You see, these tolls do more than raise money. They raise confidence. They say to every citizen, we're not just collecting fees, we're collecting responsibility. This is your country's road, your investment, your system, and for a country so often dismissed by international media, a country previously known more for insecurity than innovation, these toll stations are rewriting the narrative, one receipt at a time, and the best part, they're not built on speculation. They're not CGI renderings on government slides. They're not coming soon projects tied to campaign posters. They exist, they operate, they serve. And yet, they're only the beginning. Because the real success isn't in the 3 stations themselves. It's in the model. A model where revenue is local, management is public, technology is smart, corruption is difficult, and sovereignty is visible in steel and software. In a region where tolls have long symbolized extortion, inefficiency, or foreign dependence, Burkina Faso has flipped the script, and quietly, firmly, it's setting a new African standard. Before the toll stations gleamed, before the roads were lined, before a single electronic receipt was printed, there was a different kind of silence in Burkina Faso. It wasn't the silence of progress, it was the silence of neglect. Years before Traoré, the roads told a different story, not of vision, but of erosion. They cracked before they opened. They flooded with the first rain. They scattered with the first dry wind. And the people, they got used to dodging more than potholes. They dodged broken promises, cancelled projects, and headlines that sounded like hope but delivered nothing. There were times when roads would be announced with celebration, presidential speeches, ribbon cutting, national coverage. But months later, the bulldozers would vanish. The construction crews would go quiet, and the community would wait and wait until the weeds crept back over the gravel. And the road became a metaphor for the kind of governance that sounded ambitious but left people standing still. There were toll stations in name, concrete boxes, half-finished, a few plastic cones, a wooden table where a man might sit to collect change. Unofficially, no system, no technology, no receipts, only whispers of where the money went. And the weary joke that the toll collected more than the road ever returned. Across the continent, toll systems have struggled. Not because tolling is wrong, but because too often the systems didn't serve the people. Money disappeared, roads remained broken, trust was lost before lanes were ever paved. But here, in Burkina Faso, something different is happening. So when Traoré stepped in, expectations were low. Too low, perhaps. The people had seen too many blueprints, too many flyovers, promised, and never grounded. They didn't want another speech. They wanted dust turned into pavement. And yet, instead of repeating the cycle, Traoré broke it. He didn't begin with declarations. He began with machinery, with deployment, with visible work, and this is what makes the current toll stations matter so much. It's not just that they exist, it's what they replaced. They replaced a mindset, one that said, Africa must wait. Burkina Faso must beg. They replaced decades of dependency logic, where officials waited for foreign road consultants, and ordinary citizens waited for nothing at all. They replaced the kind of budgeting that left infrastructure last on the list, after salaries, after politics, after ceremonies. They replaced the very idea that things fall apart in Africa with something radical. Things can be built, things can work, and things can be owned. Let's be clear. Burkina Faso didn't suddenly invent toll roads. They've existed across the continent. But what's new, what's different, is that this time, they aren't funded by foreign banks. They aren't mismanaged by contractors thousands of miles away. They aren't stalled for years by bureaucracy and excuses. They are built, efficient, and transparent. And they serve as a mirror held up to the past, asking, what were we waiting for? Because the truth is, Burkina Faso was never poor in ability. It was poor in leadership. It was rich in potential, but governed by delay. And what Traoré has done is remind the region that you don't have to wait for the perfect conditions. You only need the will to begin. So the tolls aren't just booths, they're markers. Markers of where the country used to be and where it refuses to return. Where there was once paperwork, there's now pavement. Where there were once excuses, there's now execution. Where there were once slogans, there's now systems. And perhaps most importantly, where there was once doubt, now there is proof. Proof that Burkina Faso is not waiting anymore. Not to be validated. Not to be rescued. Not to be pitied. It is building. It is moving. And the past, it remains behind, in the dust, now being swept away by progress. Steel doesn't speak, but it remembers. And in Burkina Faso, that steel is starting to tell a new story. Not in speeches, not in slogans, but in structure, in toll stations, in lanes, in sensors, built by a nation that decided it would no longer rent its future from others. For decades, sovereignty was spoken of as if it were only political, as if it lived only in flags and military uniforms. But sovereignty is also made of more quiet things. Budgeting, building, managing, and refusing to ask for help when you can stand on your own. That's what these toll stations mean. They are not simply economic projects. They are a message forged in steel, wired with smart technology, and paved across national highways. A message that says, we don't need permission to progress. We don't need loans to lay down concrete. We don't need to sign our future over to build what we already know we need. Across the continent, more African leaders are quietly paying attention. Not because of headlines, not because of conferences, but because the proof is too solid to ignore. 3 toll stations, standing clean, operating smoothly, collecting revenue daily in a country that was once written off as too poor, too chaotic, too dependent. Now it's leading. Without the IMF, without the World Bank, without billion-dollar announcements, just local revenue, local engineering, local accountability. And that is a deeper kind of revolution, one that moves more quietly than protests or coups, but lasts longer than either. It's a shift in how power is understood, because power is not always about force. Sometimes power is a functional toll gate, staffed by civil servants, backed by national law, serving people, not politics. Sometimes power is the absence of a middleman, the absence of a consultant, the absence of a contract tied to colonial interest. Sometimes power is when the receipts print in Ouagadougou and not in Paris. And yes, the world is uncomfortable, because it's easy to describe African development through dependency. It's harder to explain it when a country like Burkina Faso steps outside the script. It's easy to label nations fragile when they are waiting. It's harder to manage the truth when those same nations start building. Building without asking, building without borrowing, building with intention. This isn't an isolated policy. It's not just tolls. It's part of a philosophy that Burkina Faso must define its own rhythm, own its resources, own its mistakes, own its momentum. And Traoré, whether one agrees with him or not, has placed that philosophy into steel. Each lane is calculated. Each booth is transparent. Each revenue cycle is domestic. No royalty clauses, no debt repayment schedules, no foreign fingerprints on the steering wheel. Just a government choosing to be responsible without being dependent. And that is the definition of sovereignty. You can feel it in how these toll stations were introduced, quietly, without hype, without foreign ministers flying in to cut ribbons, without press tours or staged applause. They just opened. And that too is sovereignty. Because the loudest things in Burkina Faso today are not speeches. They are results. You see it in the trucks moving smoother, in the buses arriving sooner, in the trade routes reactivating, in the contractors building, in the roads staying paved. And you hear it, not in the news cycle, but in the conversations between citizens. They're building something. No loans? Yes, ours. That kind of pride can't be imported. It has to be earned, on the ground, in the dust, under pressure. And now it is. These stations aren't just gates. They are boundaries between the old Africa and the new one. The old Africa that waited. The new Africa that acts. The old Africa that depended. The new Africa that designs, the old Africa that looked outward, and the new one that looks within. And as trucks pass through those lanes, as coins are exchanged for maintenance, not for bribes, as traffic flows clean and recorded and real, the steel itself speaks. And what it says to every African watching, to every youth wondering, to every leader hesitating, is simple. We no longer borrow the right to build. We no longer sell the right to govern. We have built this, and it is ours. It begins with a gate, but it doesn't end there. Because a toll station is not just where a journey pauses, it's where a journey pays for what lies ahead. And in Burkina Faso, the future has found its footing, not in foreign deals, not in distant dreams, but in pavement laid by Burkinabè hands. This is what the world missed when the cameras turned away, when the sanctions piled up, when the predictions warned of collapse. Something else was quietly rising, not in secret, but in silence. And now the silence is breaking. Beneath the hum of moving traffic, beneath the beep of scanned toll cards, beneath the quiet order of something finally working. This is the road forward, and it is not hypothetical. It is not a projection. It is not a campaign promise. It is kilometers of new possibility, and it changes everything. Because when a nation begins to fund its own infrastructure, it rewrites its relationship with the future. Suddenly, there is no need to beg to fix a road. No need to host roundtables to fill potholes. No need to draft apology letters for missed development goals set by foreign frameworks. Instead, the power returns home. And that power becomes practical. It means safer routes for ambulances. It means cheaper transport for farmers. It means faster delivery for traders. It means children spending less time walking and more time learning. It means jobs, not just during construction, but in management, auditing, upgrades, and innovation. Because when a toll station works, it becomes a living artery of the economy. Revenue flows, goods move, ideas connect, and the people finally feel the state not as a burden, but as a presence. For too long, governance in Africa has been experienced only at the ballot box or at the checkpoint, but now it is being felt at the toll gate, and not as force, but as service. That matters. It signals a shift from rule to responsibility, from declarations to delivery. And in Burkina Faso, that shift is not waiting for ideal conditions. It's unfolding in real time, during a military transition, under regional pressure, amid global doubt. That is the miracle. Not that the stations are modern, but that they're modern despite the odds. Not that they're working, but that they're working without foreign loans, without elite fanfare, without dependency dressing up as aid. This is the future African nations have spoken of for decades, finally being built. And the road being paved is not just for vehicles, it's for imagination. It's for pride. It's for the next generation to believe, not just in the dream of development, but in the mechanics of it. To know that self-reliance is not poetic, it's programmable, trackable, tangible. And once you've built even 1 meter of road with your own resources, the logic of begging becomes hard to justify. This is why the toll stations matter. They are not the end goal. They are not the greatest achievement, but they are the beginning, the first visible markers that something has changed in Burkina Faso, not just in politics, but in posture. The country is standing taller. And in time, these tolls may connect regions long divided. They may lead to border trade posts, to industrial corridors, to safer school routes and faster hospital access. But their true value lies in what they've already proven, that the nation can build, that leadership can serve, that sovereignty isn't a slogan, it's an invoice paid locally. Other African leaders are noticing, citizens across the region are watching, and youth are asking, if they can do it, why can't we? That's the future being activated now, not a future begged for, not a future imported, but a future built, toll by toll, road by road, act by act. And so the next time someone asks, what does sovereignty look like? Show them this. Show them Boud Tenga. Show them Tintaloo. Show them Kodadougou. Show them the receipts. Show them the smooth lanes. Show them the Burkinabè flag flying without a single foreign signature underneath it. Tell them this is how Africa moves forward, not all at once, but one toll station at a time, because the future is not just coming. In Burkina Faso, the future is already in motion. It didn't begin with speeches or with applause. It began with dust on a highway few ever noticed, in a country the world rarely mentions. There was no grand announcement, no international conference, no ribbon cutting in front of foreign dignitaries, just a new sign, a stretch of road, and a toll station no one thought would ever be built. Three modern toll booths rising quietly in the heart of Burkina Faso. Boutenga, Tintalu, Cotedougou, and they weren't borrowed. They weren't donated. They weren't tied to any foreign loan. They were built by hands that had been dismissed, built with funds that weren't supposed to be enough, built under pressure, under sanction, under siege, but not under submission. This isn't just a story about roads. It's not even a story about tolls. It's a story about leadership, about the will to act when others are still discussing. While others were drawing up feasibility reports and booking hotel rooms for the next round of donor negotiations, Captain Ibrahim Traoré was simply building. Not loudly, not rhetorically, but decisively. And the world wasn't watching, because the world didn't expect this. Not from Burkina Faso, a nation landlocked and too often overlooked, ranked among the poorest, targeted by terrorism, cut off from the very institutions it once relied on. Burkina Faso was supposed to wait for help, wait for loans, wait for permission. But help never came, and Traoré never waited. He moved, and one morning the people of Boutenga woke up, and there it was, a toll station with clean lanes, glass windows, electronic sensors, and signs. Not a proposal, not a rendering, not a simulation, a reality. Before long, another one appeared in Tintalu, then another in Cotedougou. 3 modern toll posts, standing in a country the international press had already written off. There was no breaking news alert on global networks.